big honor to be here with all of you today. To Mark and Shayla in the audience, really nice to see you. And to others that I know that are also here, great to be here with you. I'm going to share my screen to begin a presentation. Let's see. Can you all see this? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me see. Okay, so I'm gonna talk today mainly about my book and the research behind it, in how corporations use disinformation to undermine political will for a very effective public health and environmental policy. I am not an alcohol expert. I'm trying to build on the work of other experts that are here, but a lot of the ways that industry uses narratives are the same regardless of the public health issue. And a lot of the underlying ideological or financial capture issues that exist between corporations, public health organizations, and research institutions are quite the same regardless of which industry or which health issue we're talking about. I'm eager to answer any questions along the way as I'm presenting. We'll leave it to Phil and Andy to see how we want to make that happen, if you should be on video questions or just from the comments, but I won't be able to see your comments in the chat while I'm presenting because I have the full screen in front of me. So please beep me if you have a question or want to interrupt me. So I love this quote. Some of you may have heard it. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. Many of you know that Mark Twain said this. The best thing about this Mark Twain quote, I think, is actually that Mark Twain never said it. Further underscoring how great this quote is. I'm going to use it a couple of times in the presentation today. I think it's important to start with this, especially given the level of capture globally the public health community has had forever. I mean, Mark, this is one of your Nason and May's papers here on the left. And then this is a screenshot of who DrinkAware was funding just a few years ago. I think the screenshot from 2020, or funded by. So you have these NGOs that are ostensibly working to the public benefit that are clearly captured by industry. And it's essentially, DrinkAware is essentially an industry organization. But that's really kind of the tip of the iceberg for the direct capture that we're looking at. If you look at just across the board, the universities around the world that are funded by the alcohol industry, I mean, this is just a quick snapshot. It's hard to find universities that aren't funded by industry, is more to the point. So our entire research community looking at alcohol, or not even looking at alcohol, is tainted. We have all been influenced and surrounded by people that have been influenced by the alcohol industry. And a lot of the stuff that we take as axiom, or that we take to just fundamentally be true, has been largely shaped by industry without us even knowing it. So I think it's really important to be willing to question the things that we see as sacred cows, because we might actually be believing things that are harmful to the goals that we ostensibly seek to achieve. The United Nations similarly works very closely and has worked very closely for a very long time with alcohol industry and other industries. This then further shapes the way we globally think about alcohol, what we don't talk about, what we don't say, the things that are just not on the table. And then the way that each issue and the solutions to our issues are defined are being highly influenced by industry. NGOs all around us are being funded by alcohol industry. Again, further shaping and surrounding us with industry narratives in places where we would least expect it. And to such an extent that I think we just don't understand deeply enough the level to which we are captured. So we really need to go back and look at what we know for sure that just ain't so. And I'm going to cover a lot of that today. Some of it Some people might be surprised by. Some people have heard it from me before. If you've met me or heard some of my presentations or read my book Dark PR, but please feel free to challenge me along the way if you would like. In terms of capture, just to kind of recap, funding, of course, is one form of capture. And funding different actors through different layers of front groups is very commonly known. There's another kind of capture that I think is very important, is the people and organizations and institutions that actually aren't taking money from industry, but because everybody else is, they or we have adopted their ideas without realizing it. I call it environmental capture. Sometimes this is called the creeping colonialization of ideas, or cultural capture, whatever you want to call it. It's a big problem that I don't think we recognize enough. We can be captured ideologically without ever ourselves having to have been funded or directly influenced by industry. The way around this, of course, in terms of the direct capture, is to make sure we never take money from industry in any way. Self-funded, member-led organizations are best, but this still doesn't solve the problem of environmental capture. I also want to start, instead of looking at solutions to alcohol harm from an additive standpoint, I think we need to take a step back and realize that a lot of subtractive solutions would probably be more appropriate. It's not that the system is broken, but it's that we've built it this way. For example, rather than thinking of the nanny state being something that we would look to solve our problems, and it's like intruding on our lives, the nanny is actively killing us right now. The government is subsidizing alcohol. So a lot of the policies that we have in place are actually incentivizing ill health. So we could do a lot just by getting rid of the policies on the books that are actively harming us. That's not the case across the board for everything. In some cases, taxes and other things for harmful industries would be good. But I think that when we take into account the polluter pays principle, we would recognize is that taxes, in fact, in some ways are just offsets to implicit subsidies. And they're not really nanny state subsidies. They're more so offsets to an existing nanny state that is actively harming the public interest. Here's another example of another health issue that's actively subsidized. This is an Australian example. So Australian, according to a calculation I did with a colleague of mine, or a friend of mine some years back, we found that Australia subsidizes ultra-processed food manufacturers $5 billion per year. We looked at what they should have paid in taxes, and then what they did pay in taxes after all of the deductions that they were given. Quite shocking to see these numbers. And you could do similar kinds of calculations around in other countries if you have the data available, of course. If you look at fossil fuel subsidies, for example, the globally government subsidized fossil fuels, $7 trillion per year. So a lot of these health issues could be addressed by removing these subsidies. And if you look, you see here is a diagram showing diabetes incidence over time and the price of sugar dramatically collapsing over time. When you subsidize goods like sugar or ultra-processed foods or alcohol or fossil fuels or driving, you make them cheaper. You make all of these harmful products cheaper, people use more of them, and then you have more disease incidents or health harms. So again, we live on a nanny state planet, and the nanny is killing us. I think it's a very helpful way of framing a lot of these problems, rather than thinking of them as something that we need additive solutions to. Then I wanted to quickly touch on what we know works for solving health problems. We know that taxes on things that are harmful make people use less of them. Removing subsidies makes people use less of them. Changing the proximity of things to us makes people use less of them. If we make things further away, for example, alcohol-free zones would be an example for alcohol, or sometimes called dry zones, or by modifying the temporality of our policies. So making it illegal for people under 21 to drink alcohol, or making it illegal to sell or buy alcohol on Sundays or after 5, or you name it. These policies really work. And industry works very hard to shift debates so that we don't talk about these policies and they stay off the agenda. The way that they do that is by framing debates. They work to make sure that we just keep a focus and a discourse on other things. Because if we're focused on other things, we're not focused on what matters. Politics is zero sum. By having attention on one thing, you have less attention on other things. And that's something very difficult for a lot of people to keep in mind, that political will is not something that allows us to do both, to do things that are ineffective and to do things that are effective, or to use narratives that are ineffective combined with those that are effective. And I'm going to talk a lot about that today, but the core of all of this is this kind of political will pie chart here, this zero-sum pie chart of political will. Framing by industry helps to make sure that we have less attention on what really matters.